The explosion ripped through the corridor with enough force to buckle the reinforced walls. Jack Mercer pressed his back against the support beam, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead, his arms wrapped protectively around the small body clutched to his chest. The child was unconscious, her silver-white hair matted with dust and debris, her breathing shallow but steady. Behind him, the sound of heavy footsteps grew closer. Each step sent tremors through the deck plates, the measured pace of something that knew its prey had nowhere left to run. Jiao Dubachata Kongui. The voice was deep, resonant, carrying harmonics that no human throat could produce. Ngui Kong Hiu Ngudang Baobei Thuzi. Jack shifted his grip on the child, his mind racing through options that were rapidly dwindling to zero. The escape route was blocked. His weapon was empty. And the figure emerging from the smoke and fire behind him was something out of a nightmare. A giant encased in armor that seemed to drink in light eyes glowing like dying stars. Jack Mercer was 68 years old. He had survived Desert Storm, a failing marriage, the death of his wife, and the slow dissolution of his relationship with his only son. He had spent 3 decades fixing broken machines and broken people in a dusty repair shop at the edge of civilization. And now he was going to die in an alien fortress, protecting a child he had known for less than a week. The figure stopped 10 meters away, close enough for Jack to see the intricate patterns etched into its dark armor, the way reality seemed to bend around its edges like light around a black hole. Last chance, human. The monster's voice carried something that might have been amusement. Give me the child, and I will make your death quick. Jack's jaw tightened. His legs screamed with exhaustion, his arms ached from carrying the girl, and his heart was beating so hard he could feel it in his teeth. But when he spoke, his voice was steady. I spent 40 years of my life saving people that others said were not worth saving. You think you are the first one to threaten to kill me? He turned to face the creature, fully placing his body between it and the child. Get in line. 72 hours earlier, the forge had not seen a customer in 3 days, which meant Jack Mercer was down to talking to his tools again. He had been having a particularly animated conversation with a recalcitrant plasma welder when the late afternoon sun caught the dust motes floating through his workshop, turning them gold like memories he would rather forget. 68 years old and still arguing with machines. Margaret would have laughed at that. She would have stood in the doorway with her arms crossed and that smile that always made him feel like the luckiest fool in New Mexico. But Margaret had been gone 3 years now, and the only company Jack kept these days was the hum of equipment and the occasional whisper of sand against the corrugated metal walls of his shop. The plasma welder sparked and sputtered, refusing to maintain a stable arc, no matter how many times he adjusted the gas mixture. Jack wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, leaving a streak of grease across skin weathered by decades of desert sun, and one particularly brutal stretch in the Middle East that he tried not to think about anymore. His phone buzzed on the workbench, the screen lit up with a name that made his jaw tighten. Marcus, his son, his only child, the boy who had become a man who had become a stranger somewhere along the way, though Jack could not pinpoint exactly when that had happened. He let it ring. Watched the screen pulse with each buzz until it finally went dark and the notification appeared. One new voicemail. Jack picked up the phone, his thumb hovering over the play button. He could already hear what Marcus would say. The same thing he had been saying for months now. The same argument they had been having since Margaret's funeral, when Marcus had first suggested selling the shop and putting Jack somewhere people could keep an eye on him. He pressed play anyway because hope was a stubborn thing that refused to die even when you fed it nothing but disappointment. Marcus's voice filled the workshop, clipped and professional, the voice of a man who had learned to hide his emotions behind corporate speak in quarterly reports. Dad, this is the last time I'm calling about this. You are 68 years old. You are living alone in the middle of nowhere talking to machines that nobody needs fixed anymore. The world has moved on. You need to move on too. Sell the shop. Come to Phoenix. There is a good facility here. People your age activities. You will not be alone. A pause. Jack could hear Marcus breathing, could almost see him pinching the bridge of his nose the way he did when he was frustrated. Just think about it, please. The message ended. Jack deleted it without saving the same way he had deleted the last dozen. He set the phone face down on the workbench and turned back to his plasma welder, but his hands were not steady anymore. Activities. People his age. A good facility. What Marcus did not understand, what he had never understood, was that Jack was not hiding out here in the desert. He was doing what he had always done, fixing things, helping people who needed help. It was the only thing he had ever been good at, the only thing that had ever made sense. His eyes drifted to the wall where his memories hung in frames dusty with neglect. A young Jack in desert camouflage kneeling beside a stretcher, hands covered in someone else's blood. Another photo, older, faded. Jack and Margaret on their wedding day, both of them too young and too stupid to know what they were getting into, and tucked in the corner, almost hidden. Marcus at 5 years old, sitting on Jack's shoulders, both of them grinning at the camera like the future was nothing but sunshine. 847. That was the number. 847 soldiers Jack had treated during his 22 years as a combat medic. He remembered every face, every wound, every desperate prayer muttered over bodies that sometimes pulled through and sometimes did not. 12, that was the other number, the one that woke him up at night. 12 soldiers who had died under his hands while he fought to keep them in a world that had already let them go. He remembered their names too, every single one. Jack shook off the memories and focused on the plasma welder. The problem was in the electrode, he decided. Contaminated. He would need to replace it, which meant digging through the bins of salvaged parts he kept in the back room, which meant more time wasted on a job that would probably pay next to nothing, even if he finished it. That was when the shadow fell across his doorway. The sun had dropped below the horizon while Jack had been lost in his thoughts, and the figure standing at the entrance to his shop was little more than a silhouette against the dying light. But even in shadow, Jack could see that something was wrong. The figure swayed like a tree in a storm, and the sound that accompanied it, a high-pitched whine of servos pushed far beyond their operational limits, set his teeth on edge. He did not look up from his work, could not afford to seem too eager. Customers who showed up desperate were customers who would try to haggle, and Jack was too old and too tired for haggling. His voice came out gruffer than he intended, roughened by hours of silence and the dust that seemed to permeate everything out here in the New Mexico desert. Shop is closed. Come back tomorrow if you want your battle damage fixed properly. The reply came in a voice that made him stop pretending to work. Female, yes, but more than that. Rough with exhaustion, tight with pain, and carrying an accent he could not quite place. Something about the vowels felt wrong, too precise, like someone who had learned English from technical manuals rather than from living among its speakers. Tomorrow I will be dead. Jack looked up. His plasma cutter slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers and clattered against the workbench. For a moment he forgot to breathe. The figure in his doorway was barely upright, supported by will alone. She was encased in armor that looked like it had been through a stellar collision, scarred and scorched and scored with damage that would have killed any ordinary soldier a dozen times over. But it was the armor itself that made Jack stare, made him forget about his aching knees and his empty bank account and his son who thought he belonged in a home. This was not the crude military hardware he was used to working on. This was not the patchwork exoskeletons that mercenaries brought him, cobbled together from salvaged parts and held together with prayers and duct tape. This was something else entirely. The surface of the armor seemed to flow like liquid mercury, shifting and rippling in patterns that hurt his eyes to follow. Bioluminescent traces ran through it like veins pulsing with a faint light that matched the rhythm of a heartbeat. And it was dying. Jack could see that immediately, the same way he had learned to see death approaching in the eyes of wounded soldiers 3 decades ago. The bioluminescent veins were flickering, dimming some of them already dark. Cracks spiderwebbed across the surface where the flowing metal had gone rigid and brittle. Black veins spread across the chest plate like infection, like necrosis, like something rotting from the inside out. But she was not alone. In her arms, clutched against her failing armor with desperate strength, was a child. Small, silver-haired, unconscious. Holy stars. The words escaped before Jack could stop them. What kind of suit is this? The woman swayed in the doorway. Her voice came again, fainter now, the words costing her visible effort. The kind that is keeping me alive. Can you fix it or not? Jack was already moving instincts honed by 2 decades of combat medicine, overriding his caution. He approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening, the same way he had approached wounded soldiers who did not know if he was friend or foe. Up close, the damage was even worse than he had thought. Blast scores ran along her left side where some kind of energy weapon had nearly punched through to whatever lay beneath. Her right arm hung at an angle that made his medical training scream wrongness. the shoulder joint crackling with the electrical discharge every time she moved. But it was the spreading web of black veins across her chest plate that concerned him most, the darkness that seemed to be consuming the armor's living systems from within. "The child first," he said, reaching for the small body in her arms. "Let me check her." The woman hesitated, and Jack saw something flash in her eyes behind the flickering helmet display. Fear. Not of him, but of letting go, of trusting anyone with what she was protecting. "I am a medic," Jack said quietly. 22 years combat medicine. I have never lost a patient I could save. Something in his voice must have reached her because she allowed him to take the child. The girl was light, almost weightless, her silver white hair falling across her face as Jack carried her to the emergency cot he kept for exactly these situations. Her vitals were weak but stable. Exhaustion, not injury. Whatever had happened to them, the woman had protected this child with everything she had. "She will live," Jack said. "Now let me look at you." The woman had managed to stagger to the diagnostic platform on her own, her armor leaving trails of sparking fluid on the floor. She collapsed onto the support surface with a sound that was half relief, half sob. Jack pulled his scanner from his belt, the military-grade diagnostic tool he had liberated from a supply depot 30 years ago, and kept maintained ever since. The readings that came back made his blood run cold. "This is not just mechanical damage. Your armor's biological components are failing. I have never seen biotech this advanced. That is because you have never worked on Stellarium battle armor." The word hit Jack like a punch to the gut. Stellarium, he had heard that name before whispered in the back rooms of the neutral zone, where people traded in salvage and secrets. An empire that had spanned 1,000 worlds. A civilization that had existed for 10 millennia before collapsing in fire and blood 15 years ago. Jack looked at the woman with new eyes. "Stellarium. I thought that empire fell years ago." "It did." Her voice was flat, emotionless. The voice of someone who had learned to bury their feelings so deep they could not hurt anymore. "I am what is left." The woman seemed to sense his unspoken questions. With obvious effort, she reached up and disengaged her helmet seals. There was a hiss of pressure equalizing a click of releasing locks, and then the helmet retracted, flowing back into the armor like water returning to its source. The face that emerged was humanoid, but clearly not human. Her skin held a faint, luminescent quality, like moonlight captured beneath the surface. Her ears rose to elegant points that would have looked strange on a human, but seemed perfectly natural on her. Her hair was silver white, cropped short for combat efficiency, and her eyes were the deep blue of twilight, beautiful and ancient, and filled with a weight that had nothing to do with years. But it was the exhaustion etched into her features that hit Jack hardest. The bone-deep weariness of someone who had been fighting for so long they had forgotten what peace felt like. He recognized that look. He had seen it in the mirror every morning since Margaret died. "My name is Valen," her voice carried the weight of history, former queen of the Stellarium Empire. Current exile and last hope of a murdered civilization. "Queen." Jack nearly dropped his scanner. "Your Majesty, I did not realize." "Do not." Her laugh was bitter hollow. "I stopped being anyone's Majesty 15 years ago. Now I am just someone trying to fix her armor so she can continue making the people who destroyed her world very sorry they were born." She paused, watching him work with an intensity that made him want to check his hands for mistakes. "You are very careful. With the armor." Jack ran his fingers along the chest piece where the black veins were spreading, feeling the material respond to his touch. The darkness seemed to retreat slightly wherever his hands passed, and he made a note to explore that phenomenon later. Armor this complex deserves respect. These bionatural networks are incredible. I have heard theories about living metal, but I never thought I would see it implemented. Valen's voice grew quiet, heavy with meaning. "Each piece was forged from the crystallized essence of my people. When they die, if they choose, something of their spirit remains in the metal. Their knowledge, their strength, their love for those who survive." She met his eyes, and Jack saw the weight of worlds in her gaze. "I carry the souls of 1.2 billion Stellarium citizens in this armor. Everyone who died in the fall, everyone who chose to stay with me rather than pass on. They are my counsel, my companions, my conscience." Jack's hands stilled on the armor. The implications of what she was saying crashed over him like a wave. "That is not just armor," he said softly. "No, It is a memorial, a weapon, a prison. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. And most days, the only thing keeping me sane. The diagnostic finished its scan. Jack studied the results, his medical training automatically cataloging the damage, even as his mind struggled to process everything else. Lady, I do not know how you are still walking. Your power core is down to 8% efficiency. Your bionatural network has massive cascade failures in 3 major sectors. And your structural integrity is compromised in at least 12 critical areas. He turned the display so she could see. But this spread of darkness across your chest, it is not just damage. It is behaving like a virus. Something is actively attacking your systems from within. Valen studied the readout and Jack saw recognition flash across her features. Recognition in something that looked like fear. That is not possible, she whispered. He could not have. Who could not have what? Before she could answer, the child on the cot made a sound. A small whimper, barely audible, but it cut through the workshop like an alarm. Jack was at her side in an instant, his body moving before his mind caught up. Easy, easy. He gathered her into his arms, feeling her tremble against his chest. You are safe. I have got you. The girl's eyes opened, violet, deep, and ancient, in a face too young to hold them. She stared at Jack with an intensity that made him feel like she was looking right through him, seeing things he had tried to hide even from himself. Then she did something that made both Jack and Valen freeze. She spoke. Aelvery. The word was barely a whisper, rough from disuse, but it was unmistakably a word. 2 syllables in a language Jack did not recognize, but whose meaning was somehow clear from the context, from the way the child pressed closer to him, from the desperate hope in her eyes. Valen's sharp intake of breath filled the workshop. That is impossible. She has not spoken since her parents were killed. 2 years of silence. Not a single word. What did she say? Valen's voice was thick with emotion. It is an ancient Stellarium word. Children use it for, it translates roughly as grandfather, or perhaps honored elder who protects. Our people believed that some souls carried the essence of guardianship regardless of blood, that children could recognize them instinctively. She stared at Jack with new eyes. Her name is Kira. She is the daughter of 2 of my finest scientists murdered by Malakar's forces 2 years ago. I have been protecting her ever since. She has not let anyone touch her since that day, has not spoken a word, has not trusted a single soul. Valen's voice cracked. And she just called you grandfather. Jack looked down at the child in his arms, this small survivor of unimaginable tragedy. Kira stared back at him with those 2 old eyes, and something passed between them. A recognition, a choice, a bond that defied logic or explanation. Something cracked in Jack's chest. A wall he had built around his heart after Margaret died, after Marcus stopped calling, after he had convinced himself that he was done being needed by anyone. Hello, Kira, he said softly. I am Jack, and I am not going to let anyone hurt you. The child burrowed deeper into his arms, her small hands gripping his shirt with desperate strength. The moment shattered with a sound that Jack recognized instantly. The proximity alarm he had installed 20 years ago, the one that warned him when ships entered his airspace. Usually it chimed once for friendly approaches, twice for unknowns. This time it screamed, 3 urgent tones repeating on a loop that meant only one thing. Hostile approach, multiple contacts, combat configuration. Jack moved on instinct, placing Kira behind the heaviest piece of equipment in the workshop. His eyes found Valen's, saw her struggling to rise, saw her armor systems flickering with the effort. How many? He was already moving toward his security console, pulling up the external cameras. The screen showed him what he already knew in his gut. 3 ships, sleek and predatory, dropping out of the evening sky in formation. Not the crude vessels of the bounty hunters who occasionally passed through the neutral zone. These were military ships. Precise, deadly, painted in colors that seemed to absorb the light. Valen's face had gone pale. The Obsidian Guard, Malakar's personal strike force. Friends of yours, they are no one's friends. Valen tried to stand, tried to bring her weapons online, but her armor protested with warnings and system failures. They are what is left of the soldiers who burned my worlds. The ones who hunted down survivors. The ones who killed Kira's parents. Who is Malakar? The question hung in the air. Jack saw something flicker in Valen's eyes. Pain, shame, regret. He was, she stopped swallowed. He was the greatest General Stellarium ever produced, the hero of a dozen campaigns, the man everyone trusted to protect our civilization. Her voice hardened, and he was the one who destroyed it. He believed we had grown weak through peace, that the only way to save our people was to burn away everything soft and rebuild in fire. She met Jack's eyes. He killed 1.2 billion people because he thought he was saving them. And he has been hunting me for 15 years because I am the last thing standing between him and total victory. Jack processed this. A trusted general who became a monster, a civilization destroyed by its own protector, a queen carrying the souls of her murdered people. And now that madness had followed her to his door. You need to go, Valen said. Both of you. I will hold them off while you escape. This is not your fight. Jack almost laughed. After 30 years of people telling him to walk away to save himself, to let someone else take the risks, you would think he would have learned to listen. But he had not, and he was not going to start now. Lady, he said, reaching for the old plasma pistol he kept in his desk drawer. I have spent my whole life not walking away from people who needed help. My son thinks I should be in a nursing home. My wife is dead. I have got nothing left to lose except my self-respect. He checked the pistol's charge, found it full, and felt something settle into place in his chest. So if it is all the same to you, I think I will stay. The ships were landing now, their engines kicking up dust devils that swirled around the workshop like angry ghosts. Valen stared at him with an expression he could not read. You barely know me. You do not owe me anything. I know enough. Jack moved to the window, watching the ships disgorge their passengers. Armored figures, at least a dozen, moving with the practiced precision of soldiers who had done this 1,000 times before. I know you are hurt. I know you are being hunted. And I know there is a child here who just called me grandfather. He turned to look at her, and for a moment he was not a 68-year-old mechanic in a dusty repair shop. He was Sergeant Jack Mercer, combat medic, the man who had carried Rodriguez through enemy fire because he had promised the boy's mother he would bring him home. That is enough for me. The first blast hit his shields. Jack felt the impact through the floor, felt his defensive systems strain to absorb the energy. They would not hold for long. This equipment was designed to discourage opportunistic raiders, not repel a military assault. But they would hold long enough. Stay with Kira, he told Valen. I will buy us some time. How you are one man with a pistol against 12 elite soldiers. Jack smiled, and it was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who had survived things that should have killed him, who had learned that the universe favored the stubborn and the stupid in roughly equal measure. I have been fixing mercenary equipment for 30 years. You think I did not learn a few tricks? He hit a switch on his console, and outside the desert came alive. Turrets emerged from the hidden panels in the sand. Shield generators hummed to life. Sensor jammers began broadcasting static on every frequency. And from speakers hidden throughout the property, Jack's voice boomed across the evening air, amplified and modified until it sounded like the voice of an angry god. This is private property. You are not welcome here. Leave now or face the consequences. The soldiers paused. Jack could see them through his cameras, see them looking at each other, see them reassessing the situation. They had expected an easy target, a sick queen and a child, and maybe some old fool who did not know enough to run. They had not expected a fortress. But then the formation parted and a new figure stepped forward. Not armored like the soldiers, but wearing something different. Something that made Jack's heart stop. She was human, Asian American features, athletic build, moving with the confident grace of a trained fighter. Her uniform was the same black as the soldiers, but she wore it differently with an authority that said she was in command. And Jack knew her. 30 years fell away and he was back in the desert. Not New Mexico, but Iraq. And the woman walking toward his shop was Lieutenant Maya Chen, who had pulled him out of an ambush when his convoy was hit, who had taken a bullet meant for him and kept fighting anyway. Maya, who had saved his life, was leading the soldiers who wanted to kill his patient. The universe, Jack thought, had a truly vicious sense of humor. Maya stopped 20 meters from his front door, hands visible, posture non-threatening. She looked up at his external camera like she knew exactly where it was. Sergeant Mercer. Her voice was older now, rougher, but still recognizable. I know you can hear me. We need to talk. Jack's hand tightened on his pistol. Whatever they had come for, whatever Maya had become in the 30 years since Iraq, he was not going to hand over Valen or Kira. Not without a fight. But Maya had saved his life once. The least he could do was hear what she had to say. His thumb found the intercom switch. Lieutenant Chen. Been a while. A flicker of something crossed Maya's face. Pain, maybe. Regret. 30 years and a lot of hard choices. But I am not here to catch up. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was heavy with something that sounded like desperation. They have my son, Mercer. Tommy. He is 16 years old, and Malakar's people have had him for 6 months. They told me if I brought them the queen, they would let him go. Jack closed his eyes. Of course it was not simple. Of course Maya was not just a villain. Nothing was ever that clean, that easy. Life was complicated and messy and full of impossible choices. I am sorry about your boy, he said. Truly. But I cannot give you what you want. Behind him, Valen had managed to rise, standing with Kira behind her armor flickering but her eyes fierce. Jack could feel her presence like a warmth at his back, could feel the child's fear like a weight on his chest. I know, Maya's voice cracked. I know you cannot. Because you are still the same stubborn fool you were in Iraq, the one who would not leave a wounded soldier behind, even when staying meant death. She took a step forward, and her soldiers tensed. But I do not have a choice, Mercer. I have to bring them something. Anything. Or my son dies. Jack looked at the woman who had saved his life, the woman who was now threatening everything he cared about. He looked at the soldiers behind her, armed and ready, and waiting for the order to attack. He looked at his defensive systems, already straining, already failing. And he made a decision. Then we have got a problem, he said, because I do not leave people behind either. Not the queen, not the child, and not your son. Maya's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Jack stepped forward, placing himself between Maya's weapon and the woman behind him. Your son is a hostage. The queen is a target. And Malakar is the one pulling both strings. What if we change the game? How? By going after him directly. By taking the fight to his doorstep instead of waiting for him to come to us. By giving him something he does not expect. Maya stared at him. He saw calculations running behind her eyes, saw her weighing risks and rewards with the cold precision of a survivor. You want me to believe she can rescue my son. You want me to betray my employer for a promise from strangers. I want you to remember who you used to be. Jack's voice was soft now, carrying a weight of shared history. You were a soldier who saved my life because it was the right thing to do. You pulled me out of that ambush when you could have left me to die. That person is still in there somewhere. I am asking her to trust me the way I trusted her. Silence stretched between them. Jack could feel Valen's tension behind him, could feel her readiness to strike if Maya made the wrong choice. Finally, Maya lowered her weapon. You are insane, she said. You know that, right? And an old mechanic, a crippled queen, and a mute child against the most powerful warlord in the galaxy. We do not have a chance. Jack felt a smile tug at his lips. Then we have got nothing to lose. Maya shook her head, but something flickered in her eyes. Something that had been dead for months, buried under fear and hopelessness. Hope. Your soldiers, Jack said. Can they be trusted? Maya glanced back at the Obsidian Guard still waiting in formation. 4 of them are true believers. The other 8 are like me, forced into service, families held hostage. They will follow whoever gives them a better option. Then give them one. Maya was silent for a long moment. Then she turned and walked back to her troops, and Jack watched through the cameras as she spoke to them in low tones. He saw confusion, then anger, then something that might have been relief. When she returned, 8 soldiers followed her. The other 4 lay unconscious in the sand. We are in, Maya said. Now what is your plan? Jack looked at Valen, at Kira, still clutching his leg at the soldiers who had just become allies. First we fix the queen's armor. Then we rescue your son. Then we take down Malakar. He met Maya's eyes with a grim smile. Sound good? Maya laughed, and there was real humor in it for the first time. You always were crazy, Mercer. It is a job requirement. 3 days into the repair process, Jack had developed what he privately called Stellarium syndrome, an inexplicable urge to be more careful with his tools than he had ever been in his life, combined with the distinct feeling that the armor was watching him work, which according to his scans, it actually was. Your bio-natural network has more processing power than most Starship AIs, he commented, carefully realigning a damaged nerve cluster in the left shoulder assembly. The moment his fingers made contact with the exposed biometal, it flared to life, warm and responsive under his touch. Valen, who had been forced to remain partially suited during the repairs, made a sound that might have been surprise or something else entirely. Careful there. You keep touching me like that, and my armor might start getting ideas. What kind of ideas? The kind that involve locking you in here with me until you agree to become my permanent maintenance technician. Her tone was light, but Jack caught the underlying vulnerability. It has been so long since anyone treated my armor, treated me like something worth preserving rather than just using until it breaks. Jack paused in his work, looking up at her face framed by the partially retracted helmet. Who are you fighting that treated you like that? Everyone. Valen's smile was bitter. When your empire falls and you become a one-person resistance movement, people tend to see you as either a useful weapon or a dangerous liability. No one sees you as just a person who might need gentle handling sometimes. The armor's bioluminescence pulsed brighter as Jack resumed his work, and he could swear he felt something like contentment radiating from the living metal. Well, your armor certainly seems to appreciate careful treatment. Look at this neural response. He showed her the diagnostic display where the previously chaotic patterns were organizing into something resembling harmony. Where his hands had worked, the dark veins of system failure were being replaced by the warm golden glow of healthy biometal. It is responding to you like it responds to me. Wonder crept into Valen's voice. I have never seen it do that with anyone else. Maybe it knows I am trying to help. Or maybe it recognizes something in you that I am only beginning to see. Their eyes met and something passed between them. Not romance, not exactly. Something deeper. An understanding between two people who had spent too long fighting alone. Jack was about to respond when Maya appeared in the doorway. We have a problem, she said. Her face was grim, her tablet displaying data streams that meant nothing to Jack, but clearly meant something terrible to her. What kind of problem? The kind that has a 72-hour countdown. Maya crossed to where they were working and pulled up a diagnostic overlay. I have been analyzing the files we recovered from my former unit's systems. Malachar is more careful than I thought. She met Valen's eyes with something like guilt. He planted a virus in Kira, 2 years ago when her parents were killed. It has been dormant, waiting for the right trigger. Now that you are here, now that you have stopped running, he has activated it. Jack felt ice form in his chest. What kind of virus? A bioweapon. Designed for stellarium physiology, it will kill her in 72 hours unless she receives the counteragent. And let me guess, Valen said flatly. Malachar is the only one with the counteragent. Maya nodded. He wants you to come to him. Obsidian Station. Alone. Trade yourself for the child's life. Silence filled the workshop. Jack looked at Kira playing quietly in the corner with some spare parts he had given her to tinker with. She had not spoken again since that first word, but she had not left his side either. She trusted him with the absolute faith of a child who had finally found safety, and now that safety was a lie. Now she was dying and the only cure was in the hands of a monster. No, Jack's voice was firm. We are not playing his game. Valen turned to him with exhaustion in her eyes. What choice do we have? I cannot let her die. She is all that is left of her family, of her parents' work. She is your daughter, Jack said quietly. In every way that matters. I can see it in how you look at her. Valen's composure cracked just for a moment, and Jack saw the grief underneath. I promised her parents I would protect her. I held them while they died, and I swore I would keep their daughter safe. And now we find another way. Jack put down his tools and faced both women. We have 72 hours. That is enough time to plan something better than walking into a trap. Maya shook her head. You do not understand. Obsidian Station is a fortress. Military-grade defenses, hundreds of soldiers, technology, centuries ahead of anything Earth has developed. Even with my inside knowledge, assaulting it would be suicide. Then we do not assault it. Jack's mind was already racing decades of improvised solutions combining with the tactical training he had never quite forgotten. We infiltrate. We extract. We get in, save the children, get the counter-agent, and get out before anyone knows we were there. Children, Valen caught the plural. What do you mean, children? Maya's face went pale. I should have mentioned that earlier. Malachar has been collecting Stellarium children from refugee camps across the galaxy, 47 of them last count, including, including my son, she finished. Tommy is half Stellarium. His father was a refugee I fell in love with before the war. Malachar found out and took Tommy to ensure my loyalty. The pieces clicked together in Jack's mind. He is not just hunting survivors. He is gathering them. For what Valen's voice was hollow with horror. The fire of rebirth. It is an ancient stellarium technology, capable of reshaping reality itself. But it requires enormous power. What kind of power, souls? She could barely speak the word. The fire burns souls for fuel, and children's souls burn brightest of all. Jack felt rage building in his chest, cold and focused, and absolutely unshakable. Then we have 72 hours to stop a child sacrifice. He looked at the two women, these unlikely allies brought together by circumstance and desperation. I am going to need help. Over the next 48 hours, Jack called in every favor he had accumulated in 30 years. His network of contacts, built through decades of honest work and fair dealing, responded with surprising speed. A Ferali engineer named Rax Ancient, by his species standards, showed up with a shuttle full of specialized equipment. A refugee physician called Doc arrived with medical supplies and a grim determination to help. A former transport pilot named Sarah brought her ship and her skills and her desperate need for a cause worth dying for. They gathered in Jack's workshop, this unlikely band of broken people, and planned the impossible. Obsidian Station, Valen said, projecting a holographic map from her armor systems. Built into an asteroid approximately 3 kilometers in diameter. The station occupies the interior with defensive emplacements covering every approach vector. She highlighted sections as she spoke. Power generation here. Life support here. The children are held in this sector under constant guard, and Malachar himself has a command center at the core protected by multiple security layers. Maya studied the display with professional interest. I know most of the patrol routes, security rotations, access codes for the outer perimeter, but the inner sections are sealed even from me. Malachar's personal guard only. Then we hit hard and fast. Sarah was running calculations on her handheld. My ship is small enough to avoid their main batteries if we come in dark. Get us close and maybe we do not die immediately. Rax examined the station's technical specifications. Their power grid is distributed, redundant, but if we could access the main junction here, he tapped a section deep within the facility, we could trigger a cascade failure. Shut down their weapons, their shields, their communications. Give ourselves a window. How long a window? Maybe 15 minutes, maybe less. It is enough. Jack had been quiet, studying the display, thinking through possibilities. We split into 2 teams. Rax, Doc, and Maya hit the power junction. Create a distraction, draw the guards away from the children. Valen, Sarah, and I go straight for the holding facility. Free the children, get them to Sarah's ship. And Kira Jack looked at the child who had barely left his side since the revelation. She was sitting beside him now, her small hand resting on his arm, those violet eyes fixed on the holographic display. She comes with me. Whatever her parents hid inside her, it is connected to the fire of rebirth. We might need it before this is over. There was one more thing Jack needed to do before they left. Something personal. Something he had been avoiding for 3 years. He sat in the small office attached to his workshop, his phone in his hand, and composed a message to his son. Marcus, I know we have not talked in a long time. I know you think I am a stubborn old fool who cannot accept that his time has passed. Maybe you are right, but I want you to know something. Everything I have ever done, every stupid risk I have ever taken has been because I could not stand by and watch people suffer when I had the power to help. It is not stubbornness. It is just who I am. Tomorrow I am going to do something that will probably get me killed. I am doing it anyway because there are children who need saving, and I am the only one in position to save them. If I do not make it back, I want you to know that I love you. I always have. I am sorry I was not better at showing it. I'm sorry I was gone so much when you were young. I am sorry for all the birthdays I missed, and the games I did not attend, and the silences that grew between us. You are a good man, Marcus. Better than me in a lot of ways. I am proud of you. I just never knew how to say it. Take care of yourself. And maybe if you have kids, someday tell them about their grandfather. Tell them he was not perfect, but he tried. Love, Dad. He read it over twice. Then before he could change his mind, he hit send. Through his connection with Valen's armor, a bond that had been growing stronger since he first touched the living metal, he felt her presence approaching. She appeared in the doorway, her armor dim but stable, her eyes filled with understanding. Saying goodbye, just in case. Jack put the phone away. I have made a lot of mistakes with my son. I did not want that to be one more. We are going to survive this. Probably not, but we are going to try anyway. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars through the dusty window. Tell me about Malachar, Jack said finally. The real story. Valen was quiet for a long moment. He was going to be my consort. The words came out barely above a whisper. Before the fall, we were in love, or what I thought was love. I trusted him with everything. She met Jack's eyes and he saw the depth of her shame. He used that trust to murder my people. He knew every weakness, every vulnerability, because I had shared them with him. When his ships attacked, we had no warning, no defense. I was the only one who escaped, and sometimes I think that was his design too. He wanted me to suffer, to carry the weight of what my trust had cost. Jack felt the pieces click together. That is why he has been hunting you so relentlessly. It is not just about the fire of rebirth. No, her voice was hollow. It is about finishing what he started. He cannot rest until I am dead, until he has proven that his way was right all along. It is obsession dressed up as purpose. And you have been fighting him alone for 15 years. What choice did I have? Valenin looked at her hands at the armor that had become both her prison and her salvation. I am the last of the royal bloodline. I carry the souls of everyone who died. If I stop fighting, they died for nothing. Jack reached out and took her hand. You are not alone anymore. She looked at him with something like wonder. Why you owe me nothing? You owe my people nothing. Why risk your life for strangers because that is who I am? Jack smiled, and for a moment he looked younger than his years. Because someone taught me a long time ago that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. Because there are 47 children who need saving and a monster who needs stopping. He squeezed her hand. So, and because there is a little girl who called me grandfather, and I will burn down the galaxy before I let anyone hurt her. Valen's eyes glistened. You really are insane, Jack Mercer. It is a combat medic thing. We are all crazy. Comes with the territory. The morning came too quickly. Jack stood in Sarah's cargo bay watching as the team made final preparations. Rax was checking his engineering tools. Doc was inventorying medical supplies. Maya was reviewing tactical data, her face a mask of professional focus that could not quite hide the fear in her eyes. Kira stood beside Jack, her small hand gripping his with surprising strength. Through his bond with Valen, he could feel her presence at his back, her armor humming with readiness. We are really doing this, Sarah's voice came from the cockpit, breaking into the most heavily defended fortress in the solar system with 7 people and a prayer. 8, Jack corrected, counting Kira. Right, 8 people and a prayer. Much better odds. Despite everything, Jack felt himself smile. Listen up, Maya's voice cut through the chatter. Once we are inside, we will not have time for mistakes. Everyone knows their role. Everyone knows what is at stake. She looked at Jack. Mercer is in command. He calls the shots, we follow them. No questions, no hesitation. Jack nodded his acknowledgement. And Maya, if we find your son, getting him out is priority 1. I do not care what else is happening. Something flickered in Maya's eyes. Gratitude maybe, or guilt. Thank you, do not thank me yet. We still have to survive this. Sarah's voice came over the intercom. Obsidian Station in visual range. Cutting main engines. Going dark in 30 seconds. Through the viewport, Jack could see it now. A dark shape against the stars, irregular and massive, bristling with weapons emplacements and sensor arrays. Even from this distance, it radiated menace. He thought of the children inside. 47 young lives stolen from their families, waiting to be sacrificed to a madman's vision. He thought of Kira, her small hand in his, of the parents who had died to protect her, of the secret hidden inside her that might be their only hope. He thought of Malachar, a hero who had become a monster, a protector who had become a destroyer. And he thought of himself, 68 years old, broken, lone, with nothing left to lose except his life. Maybe that was why he was not afraid. "We are going in," Sarah announced. "Hold on to something." The ship lurched as they entered Obsidian Station's gravity well. Jack braced himself, one arm around Kira, the other gripping a support strut. Through their bond, Valen sent him a pulse of encouragement, of confidence, of something that might have been love, though they had known each other for less than a week. "Whatever happens," she said, "I am glad I found your shop." "Whatever happens," he replied, "I am glad you did too." The asteroid loomed before them, a mountain of rock and metal and death. Somewhere inside, 47 children were waiting to be saved. Jack Mercer, combat medic, mechanic, father widower, took a deep breath and prepared to storm the gates of hell. The docking bay of Obsidian Station was cold and dark, emergency lighting, casting everything in shades of crimson that made the shadows seem alive. Rax's sabotage had worked better than anyone expected, the cascade failure ripping through the station's power grid like fire through dry brush. And now alarms wailed in the distance, while boots thundered through corridors as guards rushed to contain a crisis they did not understand. Through the chaos, Jack caught glimpses of his team fighting their own battles. Rax had reached the power junction and was holding it against a squad of guards, his ancient hands moving across the controls with the speed of someone who had been engineering starships before Earth discovered electricity. Doc had turned a storage room into a triage center, ready to treat any wounded they encountered. Maya led the 8 soldiers who had switched sides, drawing the bulk of Malakar's forces away from the children's location. And Sarah, magnificent Sarah, was threading her ship through the station's internal passages, ready for extraction the moment they had the children. They were all heroes, every single one of them. Jack moved through the chaos with Kira in his arms, Valen at his side, their bond pulsing with shared awareness. Through that connection, he could feel her tactical instincts overlaying his own, her centuries of combat experience, guiding his movements through a facility she had never seen, but somehow understood. Left at the next junction. Her voice in his mind was calm, focused. "The holding cells are 3 levels down." They encountered their first patrol 30 seconds later. 4 guards, disoriented by the power failure, fumbling with weapons that would not charge properly in the electromagnetic chaos Rax had created. Valen moved before Jack could react. Her blades sang through the air, precise and merciful, striking nerve clusters that dropped the guards unconscious without killing them. It was over in seconds. Through their bond, Jack felt her satisfaction at the restraint, at the choice to disable rather than destroy. "Clear," she said aloud for Kira's benefit. "Keep moving." They descended through maintenance shafts and service corridors, avoiding the main passages where guards were scrambling to restore order. Jack's arms ached from carrying Kira, but every time he considered setting her down, she gripped him tighter, her small fingers digging into his shirt. He understood. In a world of chaos and violence, he was her anchor. He would die before he let her go. The holding facility was exactly where Maya's intelligence had placed it, a reinforced section deep in the station's core, where 47 children waited in cells designed for dangerous criminals. Jack pressed his hand against the access panel, and through their bond, Valen channeled the collective knowledge of a billion Stellarium souls. Engineers who had designed systems like this. Scientists who understood the underlying principles. Warriors who had breached similar fortifications 1,000 times. The door opened. Inside, the children looked up with eyes that had seen too much. Human children. Alien children. Hybrid children whose mixed heritage marked them as targets in a galaxy that feared what it did not understand. They ranged in age from toddlers to teenagers, and every single one of them bore the expression of someone who had given up hope. "We are here to help." Jack kept his voice soft, non-threatening. "My name is Jack. We are going to get you out of here." A teenager near the back, a Stellarium girl with silver hair and defiant eyes, stepped forward. "They told us rescuers would come." Her voice was bitter. "They told us a lot of things. Why should we believe you?" Valen moved to stand beside Jack, her armor's bioluminescence casting warm light across the frightened faces. "Because I am Valen, last queen of Stellarium, and I swear on the souls of our ancestors that I will die before I let Malakar harm another child of our people." The girl's eyes widened with recognition. "The Queen, you are real. They said you were dead. I am very much alive. And so are all of you. Now we need to move." They found Maya's son among the children. Tommy was 16, thin from captivity, with his mother's eyes and a wariness that broke Jack's heart. When Maya appeared in the doorway, fresh from securing their escape route, Tommy did not run to her. There was hesitation there, the distrust of a child who had learned that even parents could fail to protect. But Maya did not push. She simply knelt, opened her arms, and waited. "I am sorry," her voice cracked. "I am so sorry it took me so long." Tommy's walls crumbled. He crossed the distance and collapsed into her embrace, and for the first time in 6 months, mother and son were reunited. Jack watched them, feeling his own eyes sting. Then Kira tugged at his sleeve. She was pointing at a door on the far side of the holding facility, a door that was not on Maya's maps. "What is it?" Kira placed her hand over her heart. Jack understood. The research. Her parents' work. It was here. Sarah, Jack spoke into his comm. "Get the children to the ship. Valen and I will catch up." "You are insane." "Probably, but we are not leaving without what we came for." The door led to a laboratory. State-of-the-art equipment lined the walls. Holographic displays flickered with data, and in the center stood a device that made Jack's blood freeze. It was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. A crystalline structure that seemed to contain captured starlight, pulsing with energy that felt alive. Cables ran from it to a chair with restraints sized for a child. The fire of rebirth. Valen's voice was barely a whisper. He actually built it. Jack studied the device with growing horror. Those restraints, they are for children. Through their bond, Valen shared his revulsion, but Kira was moving toward a console near the device, her small fingers dancing across controls she should not have known how to operate. Data streams cascaded across the display. It is her parents' work, Valen translated. A counteragent, a way to neutralize the fire permanently. They encoded it in her bioelectric signature before they died. "Can we extract it?" "She has to interface with the system directly. Her bioelectric signature is the key." Jack watched Kira approach the console, so small and fragile against technology that had killed her parents. Kira reached the console and placed both hands on the interface. Her body went rigid, her eyes rolled back, and light exploded from the machine. The counteragent did more than unlock data. It was designed to save. As it activated, it found the virus Malachar had planted in Kira, the poison meant to kill her, and burned it away. In her small body cells that had been dying began to heal. She would live. And the fire of rebirth began to die. No. The voice came from the laboratory entrance. Jack turned to face the nightmare that had haunted Valen for 15 years. Malachar was exactly as terrifying as Jack had imagined. Tall, armored in darkness that seemed to drink the light, radiating power and malice. His face was hidden behind a helmet, but his voice needed no amplification. "Valen, you have come so far just to die in my laboratory." The Queen stepped forward, placing herself between the monster and Jack. "I have come to end this, Malachar. 15 years of running. It ends today." Malachar laughed. "It ends when I say it ends. When the fire burns bright with the souls of these children. When Stellarium rises again, purified and eternal." Jack felt rage building in his chest. Through the bond, he shared it with Valen. "You are not saving anyone," he said, stepping forward, despite every instinct screaming at him to run. "You are murdering children to fuel your ego." Malachar's helmet turned toward him. The mechanic, the human who thinks gentle hands can protect a dying queen. Power crackled around his armored form. "Let me show you what real power looks like." He struck. Valen met his attack, her blade clashing against his in an explosion of light that shook the room. Through their bond, Jack felt her strain, felt the damage each impact did to her systems. "Get Kira out of here." Her command echoed in his mind. "I will hold him. I am not leaving you. You are not a soldier. You are a healer. Heal this by getting that child to safety." She was right. Jack knew she was right, but every fiber of his being rebelled against abandoning her. Then he felt something through the bond, not from Valen, but from the armor itself, from the billion souls watching, waiting, hoping. They showed him what they wanted, not vengeance, not victory, just peace, and they showed him how to give it to them. Jack crossed to where Kira still stood at the console, her small body rigid with strain. He placed his hands on her shoulders, and through their connection, he accessed the data stream she had unlocked. The counteragent, the key to freeing every soul the fire had ever trapped. It was ready. All it needed was a catalyst. Jack understood now why the armor had responded to his touch from the beginning, why the souls had recognized him. 68 years of life, every soul he had saved, every soul he had lost. His essence was exactly what the counter-agent needed, and the price was exactly what he expected. Through the bond, Valen felt his decision. She screamed his name, but she was locked in combat with Malachar and could not reach him. Take care of her. Jack sent the thought through their connection. Take care of all of them. Then he placed his hands on the fire of rebirth and gave it everything he had. Light. That was all there was. Pure, overwhelming light that burned through his consciousness like a sun-going nova. He saw his life in fragments. Margaret on their wedding day. Marcus taking his first steps. Rodriguez bleeding in the sand. 12 faces he could never forget. He saw the souls trapped in the fire, billions of them screaming in agony. He reached for them with hands made of light and stubborn determination. Come on, it is over. You can rest now. And they came. One by one then in floods the trapped souls poured out of the fire. They passed through Jack, and each one took a piece of him, but also left something behind. Gratitude, peace, release. In Valen's armor, the billion passengers stirred. They recognized what was happening. They added their strength to his. Go, he told them. Find your peace. The armor blazed brighter than it had ever burned. And then it began to dim. Not dying, releasing. Through the fading bond, Jack felt Valen's grief, her love. Thank you, she said, for everything. Take care of Kira. His thoughts were growing distant, until Marcus, his father, finally did something worth being proud of. The light consumed him. The fire of rebirth shattered. Without its power source, Malachar's enhancements failed. His armor went dark. He aged decades in seconds, collapsing to the ground as the technology that had sustained him died. In the end, he was just a man, an old, broken man who had destroyed everything he loved in pursuit of a dream that was never possible. Valen stood over him, blade raised. You took everything from me, she said. My people, my home, my heart. Malachar looked up at her with eyes that had finally lost their madness. I loved you, he whispered. Everything I did because I loved you. No. Valen's voice was cold. You loved your vision of what I could be, what our people could be. You never loved us as we were. She lowered her blade. You do not deserve a warrior's death. You will stand trial for what you have done. And you will spend whatever time you have left knowing that we survived, that we are rebuilding, that everything you destroyed will rise again. She turned away from him. In the corner, Jack lay motionless. Kira was kneeling beside him, her small hands on his chest, tears streaming down her face. Aelvari, the word was a sob. Aelvari, please wake up. Valen crossed to them and knelt. Through the remnants of their bond, she searched for any trace of him and found something impossible. He was still there, faint, barely a whisper, but alive. The souls. They had not just passed through him. They had left pieces of themselves behind. A billion fragments of life force, each one a tiny gift. Doc, she called into her comm. I need you in the laboratory. Now. Recovery took 3 weeks. Jack spent most of it in a medical bay on the refugee station that had become their temporary home. Doc fussed over him, constantly running tests that produced impossible results. Your cellular structure has been rewritten. The physician's eyes blinked in confusion and wonder. The souls you freed, they left something behind. Each one gave you a fragment of their life force. Individually, nothing. Together, they gave you decades. Jack looked at his hands, the same hands that had held dying soldiers and fixed broken machines. I should have died. Yes, but the Stellarium dead decided you deserved to live. Kira visited every day. She spoke more now, her voice growing stronger with each passing week. She would sit beside his bed for hours holding his hand, sometimes reading, sometimes just watching him with eyes that no longer looked so old. One day, about 3 weeks into his recovery, Marcus arrived. Jack was sitting in the common area when a familiar voice made him turn. Dad. His son stood in the doorway, thinner than Jack remembered, with red-rimmed eyes. Marcus, how did you find me? Your message, the one you sent before. Marcus crossed the room and knelt beside his father's chair. I got it, and I thought I was too late. I thought I would never get to tell you. Tell me that I was wrong. Marcus was crying now. I was wrong about everything. You are not some stubborn man who cannot let go. You are exactly who I should have been. Jack reached out and pulled his son into an embrace. I love you, Marcus. I am sorry I was never good at saying it. I love you too, Dad. They held each other for a long time. The memorial service was held at dawn. They gathered in the common area from the oldest refugee to the youngest child. Valen stood at the center, her armor dim but present. We are here to remember, she began. Not just the billion souls who found peace, but all those who fought and died so that others might live. Jack stood with Kira at his side and Marcus at his back. Maya held Tommy close. Rax and Doc and Sarah stood in a row of unlikely heroes. The Stellarium Empire is gone, Valen continued. But today we prove that something of what we were survives. Not our power, not our empire, but our heart. She looked at Jack. We survive because a human mechanic taught us that strength is not measured in weapons, that the gentlest touch can heal the deepest wounds, that one person standing firm in their convictions can change the fate of worlds. This settlement has no name yet. Today we give it one. She turned to face Jack directly. With the consent of our people, I propose we call this place Mercer Station, in honor of the man who showed us that hope is never truly lost. The applause was overwhelming. Jack tried to protest, but no one listened. 6 months later, Mercer Station had become a community. Jack's new workshop was 3 times the size of his old one. He spent his days doing what he had always done, fixing broken things, healing machines and people alike. But now he was not alone. Kira had become his apprentice, her natural affinity for stellarium technology, combining with his decades of experience. She still did not talk much, but her hands spoke for her. Marcus had stayed. He worked with Maya, now helping organize security and logistics. Tommy was learning to fly with Sarah. Doc ran the medical bay. Rax maintained the station systems. And Valen came to Jack's workshop every evening. The settlement is growing, she said one night. 3 new ships arrived today. Word is spreading that this is a safe place. Is that a problem? She smiled and it reached her eyes. No, it is exactly what we wanted. Through the remnants of their bond, Jack felt her contentment. You know, she said, when I stumbled into your shop, I thought I was coming to die. And instead, I found something worth living for. Jack took her hand. The armor responded to his touch, warming as it always did. So did I. Later that night, they stood on the observation deck and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, the souls he had freed were at peace. Somewhere, the children he had saved were building new lives. Behind him, footsteps approached. Kira appeared at his side, slipping her hand into his. Olivery, what are you looking at? Jack smiled down at her. The future, sweetheart. I am looking at the future. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, the future looked bright. Across the deck, Valen and Marcus stood together. Maya held Tommy's hand. Rax and Doc and Sarah watched the stars. They had started as strangers, but they had become family. Jack looked at them and felt something he had not felt in years. Home. Not a place. A feeling. Not walls. People. He had spent his whole life fixing broken things. Machines. Bodies. Relationships. But this time he had fixed himself. And that was the greatest repair of all. The universe was vast and cold and full of dangers. But here on this station that bore his name, something new was growing. A community built on hope instead of fear. A family forged from loss and determination. Jack Mercer, 68 years old, grandfather to a girl who was not his blood, but was absolutely his heart, looked at the stars and made a silent promise. Whatever came next, he would face it. Not alone, but with the people who had become his world. Because that was what healers did. They kept going.